Hello, everyone. This is another Horrorable Podcast. My name is Kyle Hardigan. I'm joined with my brother Mitch Hardigan, and basically we're just talking about horror movies and we're suggesting each other which ones we like.
Yeah, we each week we're going to pick out of a hat a different genre, and we're going to decide which movie to watch. Now, this week we didn't have anything because this was just our first episode, so I just suggested something, which you'll have to listen to the end of the podcast to hear the suggestion. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoy our first episode on, well, you'll know soon enough. All right, okay. This is the first episode of a podcast. My name is Mitchell Hardigan.
I'm Kyle Hardigan, also.
This is also. We're both here. We're brothers, and we're doing a podcast on horror movies. We haven't named it yet, but it will be named by the time this podcast comes out because it will be an intro.
Yeah, we'll know what it's called. For right now,
It's going to be good, though. It's going to be a good intro.
We'll see. We'll think of
something. All right. So the first.
So what movie are you talking about today?
So the plan is to do like a different genre each week. And eventually it'll get like super specific, because we'll go through a lot of like the easy ones. But this one we're going to do slasher movies.
Yeah, we're releasing this one on Halloween, so we thought slasher movies would be the best to talk about, and what better one to talk about than the movie Halloween itself.
Halloween, 1978.
Yeah, we just watched it recently.
So I guess we'll just like go through the movie and talk about the parts that we liked.
It's the first episode, so we're just gonna kind of figure it out as you go along.
Okay. So the first thing that I like about Halloween is it's like it immediately has a low budget feel, but it doesn't feel like cheap or like they feel like they used everything they could, but it's still on a low budget. But you could show you could see a lot of the filmmaking talent, and I think that is good in the beginning because the beginning is just a shot of all black with only like a jack-o'-lantern in the background, and it slowly zooms up as you see the yellow Halloween font on the screen, and immediately you're like entranced. You're like, what is this movie? Because the score is just so, it's so good, and that's what I immediately noticed. Do you have anything about the beginning you liked?
I think for me, the thing that I liked most about it is just it's probably one of the most nostalgic horror movies I've ever seen. Like, anytime in any other movie where they reference like classic kind of campy horror movies, I think of it's like Halloween. It's like everybody's kind of like the classic story, and that's what I liked. Like how it's set up and shot. It's so it's a low budget, but it works really well for it. So it's like when you see him like in the background, really far away. I don't know. It's very.
Yeah. That's it's immediate. It also right after the credits, you get to see. You hear. I like that you hear about who Michael is from the outside, but the first thing you actually see is through Michael's eyes as a little 6-year-old boy.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's what I was gonna say. As as a filmmaking standpoint, I love the beginning of the movie, the first person, because I remember I was writing it down and I was watching it. Some of the greatest horror movies ever have those POV scenes in them that are so suspenseful because you don't really know what's going on. And I love how it goes in from a shot of the house to oh no, you're actually looking through someone's eyes, and as you move through the house.
Yeah, you're right. It's that they use, I think they call it Panaglide. It was an early form of a Steadicam, and that's basically something the cameraman wears that makes it seems smooth, there's not someone holding a camera.
Mm-hmm.
And it really works, especially the best part is it's quiet as he's coming up to the house. And he checks in and sees what, his sister's doing. His sister's with, her boyfriend. And then when he looks up towards the window and the light turns off, you hear that first score go like ding, and it like rings through, and that's when you really, that just engrosses the entire. That's a kind of mood and what I like about it's that panic glide, that slow movement with that like eerie, it's the synth score, and that's done by John Carpenter, and it's one of, I think it's what makes the movie good, because a lot of showings he would do before without music, people didn't really like it, and I can understand that because it's very slow and has like, there's, you don't really know much about Michael, which helps to the I think the film's story, but like when he includes that music, it really adds to like him stalking around and walking around.
Yeah, I think it really goes, like, the score super helps the movie. It's one of those things with like 70s movies or older movies where they have lower budgets. It's like you're gonna have a lot of empty scenes, or just like scenes of you're just kind of watching something, and it's like, yeah, it's filmed great, beautifully, because it's like you feel the suspense in the shots, but also the music kind of, I think, just elevates it a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's like you're like, once you immediately hear the music in the beginning, you're like, oh, this is scary. Like, even though it's synthy and it's not like another way, it just has this. He knew how to build tension with the music, and I liked that a lot. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, and it really, the funny thing is in those scenes you can see, like the way that you could tell that if there's a cameraman, it's kind of low budget, because the way that like almost like the little kid's hand pops into frame and he looks at the knife, like you don't really do that, like it's like the camera, but like, and also like he's like a really tall kid.
Yeah.
But it's almost like you forget about it when you hear that music, and it helps. I think it helps the points of the film that might be a little cheesy or dated.
Yeah, 100%. Because it is dated in certain ways. Like we were talking about how like, or not dated. I mean, like just the trees, where it's like it's filmed. It was filmed in the summer, and they strewed tree. But so it's like,
yeah, I think it was filmed. I'm gonna check that.
Yeah.
While we talk, but yeah, I think it was filmed in California. So you can see that like on the ground, there's like some fall leaves. I've noticed a few fall trees, but not. Most of it's like green, and it's kind of interesting. Once you look at that, you sort of. And
I think the only reason we're noticing that is because we've watched it so many times. Yeah. So it's like we pick it apart. And we go, okay, that's really. But it's like it's one of those things where we didn't notice it at first, and it's just like.
Yeah, it was shot in. Looks like it's shot in like Hollywood.
Yeah. But there's so many scenes in it that are so like the ones that I think of are like really cool. It's like.
Oh yeah, California, South Pasadena.
Yeah.
So yeah, it looks, it's not fall, but like it, for some reason that score and like the way that they'll have leaves breezing through, it's just, there's that mood that's there that just makes you forget about all that stuff, and you're kind of just, you feel like you're almost watching from afar, like Michael. It's like almost.
Yeah, no, I didn't actually think about that, but it does feel very much like. You're a third party watching this. You feel involved in it very much.
Yeah, and I like that. There's a moment in the movie where he follows around like a little kid, and you wonder around. Like at first you think he's chasing after like babysitters. Like I always try to think about his motives, like without any of the other sequels, adding into that. Like in this one, he's just, you don't know why he's there. He went home to Haddonfield, to his hometown, but. He follows like a 6-year-old kid, and I was like, oh, the last time he was out of prison was when he was like 6 and young, and he's like following around and just watching. It's like, I was just like, oh, it's like he's visiting his hometown. Yeah. He's like so sociopathic that he's like, oh, I got a kid. Like,
well, he's so insane. His first thought is when he sees a young girl around his sister's age, he's like, oh, I gotta kill her, because that's the last thing he did before he was out of.
Which you also just don't know, and it's like, that's why I like the name of it is The Shape. Because it's like he's just the shape of a human. And you only hear it from... The only person you hear who knows Michael well is a psychiatrist for 15 years. And this guy's just like... Yeah, he's crazy. Like, he has a gun. He's ready to shoot. Like...
Yeah, but I do like the calling him the shape in the credits, because there's Michael Myers, but then there's... When he puts on the mask and the jumpsuit, then he's not... He's like not... Michael Myers is a person... The shape is, he's just a force. He's a person with a knife with head, no golden line, he's like a shark. Just kill.
So, I think we should talk about, I think we've mentioned him a couple times, that his psychiatrist, Loomis, we should talk, because he's the first, right after that, when they're in the car with the nurse, and he's being transferred. Michael is going to be, and Michael's always going to be transferred. That's something like they do later in the series. He's always being transferred from hospital to hospital. It's like, no, just if we just kept him put, like,
he's
he
got to
doesn't
be
need
moving
to go
him
anywhere. Like, he's a mute who wants to kill everybody. And they're like, basically, but in this one it's good because like she asked him that. She's like, yeah, why are they even like letting him out? And he's like, well, it's the law. And you're like, oh, okay. And Loomis is the doctor, and he doesn't even call it, he calls it at first. So you feel like, oh my god, like is this, it's a man without a soul, but it's also like you only hear it from Loomis, and he's like, it's like the way of like it almost mystifies him, Michael, in a way.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's in other versions, like when they remade it with Rob Zombie, like you get more backstory to them, but I almost like not getting the backstory. Like maybe in the original Halloween I would have liked a little bit more, but it's like it's supposed to be a mystery, and it's not really the point. Where he comes from isn't the point of the movie. It's more that you're just getting a backstory, as in like we know who's this person that we're this thing.
In the background on the TV, they're watching The Thing from Another World, which is a 1950s movie, which is about an alien that stalks them, but they don't know where it's come and what its motives are. It's just what it looks like a human is blank. Like that's kind of the idea of Michael. Like they almost call him, he's referred to as the boogeyman, which is kind of really what he is. It's how and that face is just, it's such a blank white expression, and
it's such a basic human face, which is like it's so like he's wearing a mask. Yeah, it's like,
but he's also been in he's been in the facility for 15 years, and what he does is there's for some reason there's like a breakout. They don't explain it. Like they just pull up and there's a bunch of like inmates out. They're like, they shouldn't be outside, and he's like, and the Loomis is like, yeah, they really they really shouldn't be outside. and then he comes over and he smashes through the window of the
open hand slaps the window open with a big meat hook. Yeah. Just like
well, at first the nurse like rolls down the window to like yell at Loomis, and Michael jumps on the top of the car. You don't see his face, and it's just his hand grabs at the nurse, and he breaks into the car, and then he drives away. And it was weird because they even mentioned in a scene later when like they're like like the doctor explains, oh, they escaped, oh, I'm sorry, like he's like, you should, and Loomis is like, you should have been keeping better track, and he's like, oh, how did he learn how to drive? Someone must have been giving him driving lessons. How did he learn how to drive?
Oh,
Someone give Michael Myers driving lessons?
I think so. There must have been another inmate out there.
Because he's pretty good. He drives halfway through. He follows the kid in the car. I just... But...
Who's giving him... How is Michael keeping his sanity and like, he's like, I'll learn to drive, and then I'll escape.
Yeah. It's weirdly the only thing he eats is a dog. There's a scene where they walk, he goes back to his house originally at first, and like they go by and he's like, oh, there's like a dead dog. It's like and the cop and a cop and Loomis are looking around because Loomis has warned just one cop. He doesn't want to freak everybody out, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna go back to his old house that he used to live in, Michael Myers' house. And the cop's like looking around, and that's my phone. And the and when they go inside the house to search through it, he's like, Loomis is like, oh, he's been here, and there's like a dog, and he's like, oh, yeah, he ate this dog. It's like
the cop's initial reaction is he's like, a raccoon must have did it, and then he's like, nah, Michael got hungry, and you're like,
yeah, and you're like, oh,
well, which I like more because then it's real, because they really try to drive home the idea that he's a monster and he's not human.
Yeah, and then there's a great monologue in the house because he gets freaked out by something and like takes a gun out, and like the cop's like, you must be really freaked out, which is great. It's just like, that's how you sell Michael from. Not the exposition isn't told to you. And when it is, it's done in such a beautiful way because Donald Pleasence, the actor, really sells it. Which is like he just saw a 6-year-old boy with a blank expression, just pure evil. Like basically saying like, I've dealt with this kid. I've worked with him. He said I spent like 7 years trying to figure him out, and then I think he says 8 years to learn that, oh, he needs to stay. Like he's basically done. Like there's no.
Well, yeah, it was like the
help to
first
him.
7 is him trying to help. The last 8 is him trying to be like, we need to keep this guy behind bars.
Which I always found interesting because it's like an interesting thing with like it's almost like a mental illness thing. I've always kind of looked at it like a little bit like honestly how like people treat people sometimes with mental illnesses, and it's like but this is like a man who's been through therapy and been through help, and he's like he's beyond any like it's
That's
almost
what
like
I
not
like.
human.
But that's funny. That's why I like that Donald Pleasant's character is a psychologist, because cops in movies all the time, there's always cops who are like, he's crazy, we need to keep behind bars. And the psychologist characters are the more empathetic ones, where they'll be like, no, maybe we need to figure him out. This guy's like, nah, he's insane. So like the fact that he's trying to help him and found out he couldn't makes it more scary.
It's also the only thing you hear is from Loomis, and it's almost like, you can almost even think, is Loomis crazy too? Because Loomis is a little bit, Loomis tells the cop not to tell any of the people around, like, which is a little weird, because wouldn't you want everyone to know? You wouldn't want every house to be blaring and being like, oh, we're looking for, like, knowing how dangerous he is.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, it's a little bit like, and he also is like, oh, I'm waiting for him. It's almost like Loomis wants to be the one to take him down. It's a little...
Yeah, I was going to say that. There's a feeling of it. There must have been, I'm looking up a quote, because Loomis, he does feel like he's losing it a little bit. He does feel like he's kind of going, by being in such close contact with Michael, he's becoming kind of crazy too.
And it's all, I like that there's all subtextual. It's like never, like, no one's, characters are interesting because of their mystery.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and also I just love that the movie, if you notice, Michael gets closer and closer each scene to all the characters. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the,
Ooh, I like this line.
Oh, yeah.
I'm reading a Dr. Loomis line. So we were talking about the mask and it being creepy, and this is what he says. I met the 6-year-old child. This is when he first meets. He's talking about when he first met Michael. He's like, yeah. I met the 6-year-old child with a blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes. So basically the mask he's wearing is the description of it's Michael's true face, pretty much.
I like to compare that a little. I like to compare this movie a little bit, which is a good representation. Low budget. Well, it was a little bigger budget, but like they had to, because of budgetary constraints, because of the water and the shark. Mm-hmm. Jaws, also pale, blank expression, like black eyes. It's these monsters.
It makes you think, when you think of that, you think of like, when you say someone's eyes are black and that kind of describe it in that way, it's like, yeah, that's how you describe a monster, of an animal, not a human.
And what's interesting? I read that Nick Castle, he's the guy who played Michael, and the only reason he got that job was because John Carpenter thought he walked interestingly.
Really?
And you can kind of notice that he walks in a stalking way. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's these very stiff and robot. He doesn't look like a human walks, and you don't really. That's the funny thing. You don't see Michael walk much, which is interesting. Or you do like right at the end, but for most of the movie, he's either in her car or just like standing and staring at Laurie's character.
Yeah, and he's it's great because the movie just builds and builds and builds. It's kind of like the lines can be a little silly, even though I like how the teenage girls are represented in this. I think what a lot of people think about when they think about slasher movies and like the sexist ones, I think they're thinking more Friday the 13th, which is a whole other subject.
In this movie, it wasn't like there's always the girl character who's overly sexual and over the top. It's just more like in this movie, all those character roles were toned down a lot. Where it's like, yeah, Laurie's character is a little dorky, but she's mostly a normal girl. She does drugs and stuff like that. Like, she's a person, and then her friends have as much sexual stuff as a normal teenager would when they're
different personalities, and I think that it goes to who wrote it. With Deborah Hill is the other woman who wrote it, which is funny. I like that all the girls smoke because Deborah Hill was a huge heavy smoker. Actually, what happened to the original Halloween mask is after they made the movie, when they're going to make Halloween 2, they were like looking for the original mask and they couldn't use it because Deborah Hill kept it in her like office where she smoked all the time. So it was just yellowed with like smoke. So like they were just like, they found this yellow Halloween. I just love that. But it's like but it kind of goes to it, that kind of adds to the characters and you really care for them. You almost seem lost in, it's one of the few times where I've been lost in just the characters just talking to each other and like getting to know each other. I think it helps that Michael is always just around in the background, just slowly just following and breathing, and it's just like you feel it throughout the whole movie, and then when it just the last few minutes punches you.
What I will say, yeah, that's a thing a lot of movies started to do, where it's like the build up to suspense and then the last 10 minutes of scary stuff, or 20 minutes or whatever. But I think this one does one of the best jobs of it, because in a lot of movies that came out at the time, like I think of like Friday the 13th, which was also low budget, the suspense part of it's kind of boring. Like they don't build the suspense as well as, and I credit that like to what you're saying, like the camera movement,
the
like
Steadicam,
the slow panning, just kind of like, and that's what I would say, like it does fit, and because of the camera movement, that's how you feel like you're watching these things going on, and you're kind of out of control. You're just kind of watching Michael move and being like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it was like I think I was wrong. I called it something different, but it is the original Steadicam, which is just I think it really helps. It because it has old cameras. I think the issues I have with it is can be like it does. There is a moment in the middle where it kind of meanders a little bit, like with, like talking with the kids and like doing the Halloween stuff and people. I think it goes to where they're kind of building the tension. And just, some of the ADR I've always noticed is just the way that everyone sounds like they're recorded over or dubbed over. Just bad. The sound can be kind of bad. You can't hear people in some scenes.
Like the famous Dr. Loomis sign. Hey, Lonnie, get your ass out away from there.
Oh, yeah. And then he just has a little smile. He always has like a little smile.
Proud of himself.
Yeah. Well, and that's another issue where Loomis is just kind of like walking around. He just sits while Michael's killing the other two babysitters and just like doing all this stuff. Loomis is just sitting at the Michael Myers house waiting. And all of a sudden, when at the end, he's just there.
Yeah, that's my thing. I think Loomis was there in the beginning for exposition, and then they kind of just sort of like, well, Loomis will come back later.
It's not perfect, but I think that's what makes it fun. Is its imperfections make it actually kind of better, but there are noticeable and I think the datedness of some things, especially like also when like the cop is like, oh, some guy stole a mask, some rope, and some knives. Just some kids playing some tricks. And you're just like, shouldn't you be? This is before he knows about Michael, but still, like, you're a bad cop.
That's the thing I like about them. Yeah, that's the thing. Campy movies are so fun. You have to definitely enjoy.
Yeah.
But that's what's fun about it, because you watch it and you're like, it was like the first like slasher, like a sane person escapes from a thing, steals some knives, and kills people. That's such a quintessential slasher movie thing that I like. So.
And then this put it all together. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, and then I love what I love about the ending of it is just it's such a good. I love to watch it on Halloween because it's so creepy. Because I love at the end. I love the end when he gets shot off the balcony, and there's that famous line was that the boogeyman? Yes, I believe it was. Yeah. It's like you're almost like, oh my god, like is that whole once the chase scene with Michael goes on and that whole thing is so good. The last half, like you're just always like, oh, and you're like, oh, he's gonna get up. He gets up one last minute all the time. You're like, oh, he's unstoppable. Like it really they sell him the whole movie, and he equals what I mean, like he misses a couple stabs a couple times that are like obvious, like he should be able to do. Yeah. But it's like. There's that fun, just that chase.
Well, that's the reason people like Evil Dead and like old kung fu movies. They just like the campiness of it. They like that people. And then I was gonna say
the way he sets up the bodies and steals the gravestone.
Yeah, but I was gonna say there's a line when she's talking to Tommy. She's like, are you scared? She's like, there's nothing to be scared of. He's like, are you sure? And she's like, I killed him. And then he's like, but you can't kill the boogeyman. And I was like, that's a good like.
Which is just that's what it and that's actually so good because I love just the end when they go and check to see if the body's still there and it's gone, and they just show different empty rooms around the place and it's like he's out there and it ends. It's so good.
But I like the recap at the end with all the kind of the havoc that happened. It's her house, it's their neighborhood friend's house. And it's his house, and it's just sort of like it's just kind of over like it's tiny town, and it's like it's
the town, and also he could be in our town, and the boogeyman's everywhere. Like that's what it really. I think that really I think that's what makes it so good, and what makes it so hard to make a sequel to something like this. Now, the Halloween 2 sequel's pretty good. That's like, he chases her after her as she goes to the hospital, and it's all in the hospital, which I like. Is good, but this first movie, just the ending is so perfect. Of like, he's out there. It's like such a good creepy. It's great to call it Halloween. It's just like, it's a great horror story.
Yeah, and I will say from start to finish, all the stuff is so creepy. He does John Carpenter does such a good undertone of just like unsettlingness. You never feel comfortable in the movie at all, which I love. That's how I love him. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's a classic horror movie.
And I mean, I think the big thing is also just the score just makes it go. And I think this is a good start to kind of how 80s horror, everything from this point was, you had to have a slasher movie about a holiday. Like there's a bunch of those that came on, and it just,
it's like you need teens doing bad things and you need a guy coming after them. That's the classic.
Which is, I mean, that's, I think when slashers are just, I just think that this is the type of thing that I like, because I like the final girl type of thing. Like I like when it's used in this way, which is like, she's shown to be the smartest out of all the group. In the way that she acts, in the way that she does things, not because she's just a dork or a virgin. Like that's not the whole thing. When later movies included that, like this one is just she fights back because she was smart and she knew what to do. She knew to ran in the closet and to hide and how to get him to trick him, and basically one based on her abilities, and I think that's so good because she's like holding her own, like she almost defeats him, without Loomis's help, and I think that's such a good,
it's a good, no, what do you mean?
I like,
but I will say that's my favorite when she stabs him and leaves the closet. That's probably my favorite shot in the whole movie is when he does that stand up where he almost unfolds his body, and I love that shot because it's the most vintage classic, like such a great horror. It reminds me of like, I don't know,
the dark cinematography, that dark shot which he pulls against the closet and you can just see his white face. Such a creepy, I mean, it's so it really like this movie I think really kind of used it was a good starting point, like it was for horror movies to come. Just because all the stuff it's set up, just the idea of tension and the use of steady cams and that kind of thing. And so much of the stuff is reused and redone and so many different things. It's good to see it done well from, just... And I think what I like about Halloween is just it has a little bit of an artistry to it that other stuff doesn't,
Yeah, or although it's low budget, although it's a 70s movie, although there's some issues, it's still, there's a heart to it.
Yeah. If I suggest anyone to watch like this is the one slasher movie I say everyone can watch too. It's like it's there's blood in it and stuff, but most of the time he's choking people. Like it's not. It's the scary thing is the tension and the suspense.
Yeah, it's not. That's what I like because I'm not a person who's super into super gory movies, so I love suspense. Suspense is it's like the key.
This does have one of my I think favorite kills where he uses the giant kitchen knife to stab. It lifts the boyfriend up and stabs him and sticks him in the wall.
Pins him.
The head tilt. Like it's exactly where you're like, oh, Michael, you can't. Like that's right before he's about. You're like, oh my god, this guy's ridiculous.
The head tilt is almost like he's appreciating his work. Yeah. Like he's like stabs him. He's like, nice.
It says so much about, and it's just that movement and the way it's done.
I will say the guy Castle, he does. That's the thing. The movement of his character is really.
He did exactly just what John Carpenter told. John Carpenter would be like, walk there, do that, and it was just...
It's just him being walking at. It's so great.
It's just, I think it shows the talent to John Carpenter and his...
Is Nick Castle the same, when they pull the mask off, is that also Nick Castle?
I'm not sure. I'd have to check.
Yeah.
Check that in the comments. Yeah. All right, we're about to the end, so I'm going to do... I'm gonna do my final rating
recap. Okay.
So I'm on Letterboxd. If you ever want to see, I'll link that at the end. See that. That's where I review stuff. That's out of 5, but I like to review out of 10 as well. Don't worry about it. It's easier.
Yeah.
But this is a 4 out of 5 or an 8 out of 10. I think it's it's a great classic movie. I think everyone should see it. It has problems with budget and can be a little slow, but I say that it's a great movie and it's one of my favorite. I have a tattoo of it.
Yeah, and I would agree. My final rating would be an 8 out of 10. It's most of this, because most of the issues just come down to like the time it came out, but like everything else is, I love it. It has such good bones for what makes a great horror movie.
All right, and at the end we'll tell you what we're gonna do next week. So
you're suggesting me a movie?
Yes, I'll be suggesting you a movie.
At the end of every episode, we're going to be suggesting each other movies for the following week. So Mitchell gets this week, and he's going to suggest to me. We'll see, and then I'll do next week. Okay.
So you'll hear that at the end. But for now, bye. All right, so now it's time for the suggestion for next week, and it's my turn. So I'm suggesting we're doing classic monster movies,
Nice.
basically just monster movies, and we're gonna watch Tremors.
Nice. I love it.
All
Classic.
right. Classic.